this is your host Jay. Welcome to Sector 1, aka Weird Science and Freaky Magic. If you guys haven't liked, please give us a like and subscribe. Today, what I have for you guys here, this photo, it shows a photo of an alleged grey being taken by Giovanna Podda. She's from Italy, so some of the sources I had to translate into English, and this photo was taken not too long ago, like just a couple of days ago, of an alien being that came into her house. She said that she's been having encounters since she was little with these grey beings, and if you look at the photo, like the grey being has partially materialized and the lower half is still materializing, is almost see-through, translucent. I'm thinking to myself, what would be the reason why out of all the humans she would be selected for these type of, incursions, and what would the alien beings bring with them during these incursions. If you look at the alien being, the eyes looks like it's got sunglasses lens of another high-tech versions of Google Lens. I guess it'll have a lot of information that it can capture and receive from the lens itself into the iris, or itself it could be an amplifying device for their telepathy or almost their psychic abilities. So if they're able to freeze someone or wipe out somebody's memory, the eyes is the visual cortex straight into the brain itself. So that would be the most efficient way of transmitting and receiving. So I'm just looking at it and I'm just thinking, what are the reasons why she would be chosen? One, her DNA is matching of the grey races, so it's able to manipulate the genetics from hers. Two, she might have more resilient strains of DNA, so very, very tough genetics, very strong genetics that allows some environmental factors that have mutated into a much stronger strain that allows her to survive in the environment that she's at currently, and also the environment of the Greys' homeworld, to allow them to reproduce or to not be affected by the environment. So one is compatibility, and two is resilience. So very resilient genetic strains. Number three, what I can think of is, she would have attributes desired for the grey race, right? So any attributes that they deem desirable, maybe very high cognitive intelligence, precognitions, psychic abilities, or anything that their race is lacking or is trying to make up for or reassemble what they have lost during their cataclysm to their homeworld. And I just want to compare side by side, right? There's another video that was captured in Turkey by a night watchman of this UFO craft. The night watchman managed to take a very close zoom up of these grey beings, and I just want to compare them side by side, and you guys will notice some stark contrast. If the greys are clones, the matching will be at least 90, 97, 98, 99%, right? Similar. They might have different personality, but the appearance will be very, very similar. So here's a clip of the turkey incident, and just to compare side by side what you guys see from this photo and the photo from Turkey.
There was a bright full moon, and below the moon was this little bright spot. We didn't know what it was, and we were filming out over the water. There was no structures in the water. There was no oil platforms. There was no ships going by, and we zoomed in. This camera had a 200 millimeter lens and an electronic doubler, so we were able to get very tight on the leading edge of the craft. The craft, you have to realize, is being lit by the moonlight, which is, as I said, a very bright moon. And then right in the front of the craft, there appeared to be 3 windows, viewing ports, whatever you want to call them. And standing in these viewing ports were typical bumper sticker gray aliens. And I saw this, I looked through the camera myself, and unfortunately recorded it. That video went to a university in Istanbul and went over extremely intense scrutiny by the Turkish government, and then the video was also sent to the UK and several other countries for analysis. By the time all that had been done, it had already been on the internet and could absolutely not be suppressed from the public. Recently, this year, the video was given to a analyst in Chile, and he did another review of the film, but this time, instead of concentrating on the craft, he concentrated on the occupants. And on my website, alienscalpel.com, you'll see the entire Chilean analysis.
A third case here by the name of Stan Romanek. He's got a famous UFO adoptee / contactee. During his encounters, usually they were trying to hybridize offsprings from him. And if you compare the greys with the first 2 sets, there's a bit of a difference with this one. I will class the first 2 as type A, whereas this one is a type B grey. The type A greys might be coming from Zeta Reticuli, and type B, they might be coming from another place altogether. There's some stark contrast differences between the 2 types. Type A seems to be more rigid, more mechanical in nature, like maybe cybernetics or AI enhanced in terms of technology used that they've integrated into themselves, whereas type B, which you are about to see, is a little bit more I guess less artificial and more biological, if that makes sense. I get the feeling it has more atomic structure to its and plus, like, if you have a look at its movements, even the cranium itself kind of twitches and moves. It has more facial expressions that it's able to make compared to the type A's. So with facial features and expressions, it could mean their telepathy and psychic abilities is much less used. Enhance facial expressions, they're able to express themselves and also to be able to use other forms of communication So it seems like their facial expression is more developed than the type A's. The type A could be far more advanced than type B, where they've integrated themselves into technology, I guess, not needing to express their facial features or express themselves if they're doing it all by some neural network or telepathy or psychic abilities. So guys, this blog is by Romina Malizia blog. She managed to get an interview with Giovanna Podda. It was in Italian, so I've translated into English for you guys. And there's some of these questions that she answers. I'll read them out to you guys, okay? So the blog starts off with explaining her story. Giovanna Podda, the Italian woman victim of alien genetic experiments. Giovanna Podda is an Italian of Sardinian origin, a victim of close alien encounters, identified by her as the Greys. The exact term for those who have experienced similar encounters is alleged. She claimed to have undergone genetic experiments since childhood, specifically hybridization with the alien DNA. She alleged she suffered more than 18 pregnancies and has hesitation over the years in revealing her testimonies in fear of suffering consequences with respect to the truthfulness and the facts, and above all her personal reputation. Something that happened because today Giovanni lives life often isolated from friends and relatives. That happened because today Giovanni lives life often isolated from friends and relatives. Repeatedly interviewed by national and world radio and TV. So the blogger asks her the first question. Question number 1. Giovanni, what was your first close encounter, if you describe exactly how and where it happened? Giovanni replies, my first encounter with these beings, they call Greys, started around the age of 5, although I was not yet fully aware of these beings were aliens from another world. I lived with my family on a farm far from the village, and there were no other families in the neighborhood. I did not have many contacts with other children, so I did not realize these beings could be different from me and from other children. Or maybe they could make me believe that they were friends who came to play, so they told me never to tell my family of these meetings. I immediately obeyed, and I did not know anyone other than my little brothers and sisters, and I did not want them, for some reason, by their family or by mine, to prevent from coming to play with me. They often come when I was just on the swing under my favorite big tree, talked to me about many things and told me to pay attention, because things they said to me would be useful in the future when I got older. Since I was a child, although I did not realize it, I always been fascinated by everything related to nature, animals, flowers, wind, rain in particular. I stayed several hours, especially on summer evenings, putting a mat on the terrace, watching the stars. For me, it was a very rewarding thing. I have always been attracted to the eclipse of both the sun and the moon, and I had a strong feeling the sun could be my father. It was easy for a child at that age to consider myself a dreamer with a keen imagination. And the blogger asked the second questions. We are calling them, quote, aliens close encounters, end quote, because in your opinion, it is the most exact form of abduction, quotations. How have they changed your life? What did you dream of accomplishing as a child? Did you make those dreams come true? Giovanni replies, even if I did not realize my childhood was not the same as that of my other peers, even at school, I had a serious problem in relating to teachers and classmates. The influence of these grades had given me some notion of mathematical physics, and many of other things at the age of 7 are not taught in elementary school. I was often reprimanded by teachers who thought I read books of my older brothers or took who knows where to be able to deal with topics of quantum physics or astronomy in my teens. In my childhood, I used to treat these topics as they were normal things, not realizing that they involve misunderstanding on the part of teachers. I've always been a girl who grew up too fast, too curious, but also with all the will to explain certain truths. These beings, as I grew up, they were more and more present, and I realized that they were instilled in me fears that I could not give explanations. I also felt ailments such as hearing voices in my head or coming from who knows where. I soon began to leave home without realizing time had passed. I often found my parents very angry and waiting for me at the front door and undergoing punishment because I could not explain where I had been for 4 hours, while in my mind I had only memories of moving for a moment or going to a garden with the intention of picking up fruit or simply take a walk among roses I have always loved. I often was punished, and this often led me to hide upstairs and stepped away of my staircase that led into the terrace, where I would sit in the dark clutching my head with my fists crying for hours. In my heart I had a vague idea that the fault lay with these beings, and I felt more and more intrusive, more and more present, incomprehensible discomfort in me, so much that many times I tried to send them away. This is around the age of 10 and 12. I had never heard the extraterrestrial aliens, that the word UFO did not exist in my language, nor in that of my family. I had no idea that these were life forms outside my planet. Even if my attraction for the beyond, for the mystery, was more than fascinating, for several reasons I had to grow up fast. A little sister who had arrived by the age of 9, my mother put her in my arms, giving me responsibility as an adult. But I was a little girl. My mother would work with my father, and they would spend all day in the countryside. I did not know my childhood, and indeed I saw my middle school classmate ridiculed when I assumed attitudes that I would never have dreamed of imitating. I felt older and showed it in everything. Then, even worse, time began when my parents and sibling waited for me for too many hours. They gave me not understanding why I was away from home, and I could not give answers to where I had been. They began to think that I was secretly seeing me with some guy, but these things were unthinkable for me. I saw myself ugly, and I thought that I would never get married. But aliens continued to be part of my life, and I did not meet them only during the day. I would often went to bed at night, and the next morning found myself curled up in the closet. I knew something strange had happened, as I knew I had begun outdoors for many hours during the night, enough to remember the sun was rising, and I was looking in fascination. So the blogger asked the third question to Giovanni. Do you know the identity of these aliens you call the Greys? Who are they to you? And can you give a description of their physical, intelligence, skill, way of communicating, technology used? Giovanni replies, at the age of 19, these grey beings had always telepathically communicated with me, but until then I did not pay attention to this way of communicating. I began to understand through their thoughts that they were not of this world. They began in small doses to tell me where they came from, telling me that they were alien race, calling themselves the Most. Perhaps due to the fact they were all same in appearance. They had big black eyes, their skin was smooth like that of a dolphin's. They wore a sort of second skin, like a fitting suit, that adhered perfectly to their hairless body. I also noticed the absence of zippers and buttons. They told me that I should go with them, and that I was ready by now. I didn't understand what they meant. I have multiple memories, mixed and confused, that since I was 12 and 13 years old, they were carrying me on board their flying saucers, memories that I have tried to crush, because I didn't like what they did to me. I stared at the memory of the cold, smooth metal bed I was laying on. Around me, 4 or 5 of these that I saw, not having grown, had the heights not exceeding 60 to 80 centimeters. But in front of me, there was another, more than a meter tall, darker skin, and more of an elongated in relation to the heads of those I thought were my friends. Instead, they had a huge head compared to the body, more of a heart shape. I remember that I had very strong pains in my lower parts of the abdomen, and some of them talked to me telepathically, trying to reassure me by telling me to stay calm and quiet. It would be all over quickly, and they would take me home right away. I couldn't talk to my parents about what was happening. I couldn't talk to any of my parents about what was happening to me. It wasn't easy for me to find the right words. Also because I didn't know how to define them. Dreams, nightmares, fantasy, madness. I often thought about it. Too much confusion and misunderstanding of all this. I often asked, why did they do those things to me? And the answer was always the same. They needed me, us humans. The blogger asks Giovanni the fourth question. Do you personally have any knowledge of other extraterrestrial races? Giovanni replies, this is a desperate race that millions of years ago, abusing their nuclear power on their planets, ended up getting sick and becoming sterile. Their sexual attributes atrophied. As a result, their planet were now extinct. They collected as much material that was found on their planets for the construction of their aircraft. They began to travel space in search of planets to adapt their life to, but also in search of a race that is biologically compatible with them in order to be able to take advantage of some elements that were found in our body in order to heal some diseases. Even then, they were using modifiable stem cells in laboratories to be compatible with their physical and biological structure. The blogger asked the fifth question: how similar are these alien races in your opinion? How hostile are they to Earthlings? Giovanni replies, I know several alien races in addition to the Greys. For example, I have known the race of reptilians who are tall beings and can take the form of human beings. Some of these groups are mixed with humans and live mainly among the people of governments. They are not exactly benevolent. Indeed, I would say most of them are more evil than the Greys, only used to ensure the continuation and survival of the species. They are also at war with these so-called reptilians. Many of them come from Z reticuli. They eat raw meat and have a high developed intelligence, knowledge of multiple technologies. They have made agreements with the governments in order to be able to take control of large masses of people and manipulate their thoughts, their behavior for war purposes. In fact, they quarrel and make wars with many extraterrestrial species that do not look favorably on their work. Currently collaborating amongst the military, their nature has a great influence in helping building the next generation weaponry. Unfortunately, there are also races such as the Palladians, Syrians, and other races who often intervene and try to block the hands of these bullies. Since all the planets have their own vibrations, including ours, the inhabitants of these presents a current negative vibration of ours that is affecting them. That is why the Palladians, Syrians, and other benevolent races often come to us who are much more evolved, both spiritually and evolutionarily level. Their intent is to guide us to open the mind and consciousness so that we can rise up to their same level, so to bring balance between all the species. But to do this, they say it takes a long time, since only a small circle of people have the ability to learn and implement their intent. The laziness and the will and the wants raises the part of the masses will involve a selection of those who they will not be able to abandon earthly customs and virtue and vices. They will be deemed to succumb to under their own actions. Only those few selected will have the possibility after the planet for the upheaved time will be annihilated by the hands of man. There will be possibility of bringing a new, more evolved, balanced civilization, but this won't happen for another 50 years. Then the blogger asks the question 6 and 7 together. Exactly what physical damage did they cause on your body? In the medical field, what knowledge would they have? Giovanni replies, the intervention made on human beings kidnapped by the Grey consists of mainly the removal of biological substances biocompatible with their species, in order to cure some of the diseases that they have contracted in their planet due to strong exposure to manipulation with nuclear power. This seems, which dates back to several millennia ago. Fortunately for them, they have a great intellectual capacity, multiple knowledge in fields of science and medical space engineering. This allows them to build highly technological advanced machinery in both robotics and digital, and unparalleled knowledge and use of different types of energies not found on Earth. At one time, they too collaborated with various governments with the aim of helping them improve their knowledge of medicine and build the machinery
necessary for our evolution. However, they soon realize the evil intentions of man, who do not listen to the advice on how to use certain energies, such as the atomic one, with which the bomb that caused great disaster of those times was built, nor there were any suggestions of creating drugs that can cure many of the serious diseases such as cancers, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. Many of the pharmaceutical companies have been aware of them for more than 60 years, but have not wanted to put within the reach of those in need, because they could not continue to bring the vast trade into multiple and useless drugs or machineries to fight cancers. The ultimate cure would stop their business and the chain of factories, buildings and machineries to sell at sky-high costs in various medical facilities. A huge repercussion and loss of jobs, both to those who built these machineries and those for the doctors who used them on desperate poor, who could instead heal with certain drugs, avoiding control, death, and unnecessary suffering. The blogger asks, your life has changed and has been overwhelmed by these, quote, encounters, end quote. In your opinion, what is the reason, or if you have been told of these visits, what time do they come and pick you up? Giovanni replies, obviously my life has been completely upset by these experiences. I feel that I have always lived two lives, one too heavy at times to bear, even if they have always maintained that I would have decided before I was born to put myself at their service to collaborate in this project of recovery and the continuation of their species. What they do on my body I cannot always hide, as I have very evident scars on my hands from the practice of sampling the substance consistence of blood keratin and methylene. The latter is a very important hormone that in human beings has the function of controlling moods. These substances are used in their laboratories to multiply and process with stem cells in order to nourish the hybrid fetus and allow their good development and growth. The blogger asks the ninth question, alien hybridization. Can we find out more? Giovanni replies, many of these races for many years had hundreds, if not thousands, of underground bases here on Earth, under the sea, but also on the moon in the dark side, and on Mars, as well as other planets, where they are managed to adapt. But life on Earth is the closest to their physical structure. Sometimes I was also taken to the extinct planet, and they also show me our planet from the outside, as well as the megalith constructions that are on the moon. Traveling, bending space-time, they say our physical laws out there are completely different. Therefore, luckily for them, we do not have the ability to travel at that speed like that of the sound used by them. They can move, creating temporal space in which, in a nanosecond, they can be 20 light years from Earth. They often return to their own planets to collect materials that does not exist here on Earth or on other planets. These materials are made up of various elements that are assembled and used in construction of the aircraft. At the moment, they think that man should absolutely not have this type of material in his hands, and they are careful not to want to give it the possibility to build craft like theirs. Knowing man, they prefer that he remains with his limited knowledge in building even today's, as in the 60 atomic propelled rockets. Since if they succeed in building an aircraft similar to theirs, we will begin to invade any inhabitable planets and exploit all the resources for commercial purposes. And That's what's happening with the ongoing mission on the moon and soon to Mars. Then the blogger asked the 10th and 11th question. You can specifically describe their spaceship, quote, how similar are they to Earthlings? You have a lot of video, films, photo and medical materials to prove your encounters. When you reveal your testimony to the world, what happened? Giovanni replies, every time they come to pick me up, it happens that they also took me outside our planet. I have also been to other planets similar to ours. They also managed to change the shape of their aircraft according to the electromagnetic waves that are in space or curved space-time, which we human beings are unable to see or perceive. They manage to cross even black holes and white holes and find themselves in the moment in another dimension, in another solar system. They managed to reset the time, and I was able to experiment being inside their craft despite traveling at a speed that I cannot calculate. My body was absolutely not affected by the displacement, because inside it is as if nothing moved. I could have stood lying or sitting or without undergoing any movement from my body, and so for them, I have never been able to explain to myself why, on returning home, I always find that I have been away almost 4 hours of our time, while also in reality, I couldn't not have been more than 20 to 30 minutes with them. Then the blogger asked the 12th question. Why do you think it's so difficult in Italy to talk about extraterrestrial encounters in general? How much skepticism exists, and why did you get an idea? Giovanni replies, these experiences have also given me the opportunity to learn a lot of knowledge that is not learnt in school, nor on university chairs. Perhaps this is the only most positive side of my experience. I have a lot of photographic material, video, that they have allowed me to do, above all to demonstrate to myself that everything I have lived and always really happened. Also, because altering my co-science every time I am withdrawn, especially in the early years when I had difficulty remembering, but above all accepting and believing that perhaps they could be dreams, although this material I could have answered what I had fallen was not a result of dreams or fantasy. I'm sorry that when I felt the need to relate to others, especially my people, my country, for me it was a catastrophe on a psychological, emotional and working level. Everyone pushed me away as there was little preparation in people, especially here in Italy, to accept someone who really lived these experiences. For years I have suffered and still suffer today due to the judgment and prejudice of people who do not want to accept this reality. I found myself alone, without a job, without anyone who wanted to give me, without a social life, without a family who felt suffocated by the arrogance of people and negative judgments towards me. Fortunately, this is here in Italy, and I'm sorry that it is my people I am sorry that it is my people who leave me behind, because in foreign countries, the culture in this field are much more advanced and more open. 13th question. Can you describe the reason for your trip to Japan? In the world, which country is the most open-minded in regards to these, quote, alien visits, end quote? Giovanni replies, when I was invited to the mystery show broadcast in Italy, a team of Japanese became interested in my case and immediately wanted me to undergo tests to verify my authenticity. What hasn't been done here in Italy, in fact, the Japanese have always allowed me as an invitation for 5 years, with whom I made documentaries and film that they broadcast to the biggest TVs in Japan, Korea, Holland and China. The first thing they did at their expense was to make me take the exam to verify the study where the microchip was, an alien implant that is positioned in the pituitary glands, englobed by hundreds of nerve endings, that allows the aliens to be able to monitor and to know me any place I am or move on Earth. It also allows them to check on my health status and solicit a schedule, ovulation or breast lactation, so that I can then come to get myself when I am ready to be able to collect eggs or insemination, them in my uterus to collect the hybrid fetus as soon as it matures enough structure to be transferred to an artificial uterus. In their laboratories and grown to their development to continue, but the Japanese were very useful in the exams they subjected me to, because thanks to them, once subjected to lie detectors, it was possible to discover that everything I have experienced was not a result of fantasy but an authentic reality, so much that later they also examined the substances left on my clothes. Then the blog asked the 14th question: how and when and exactly was the microchip you have in your brain inserted? Do you know any reason for these inclusions? Does it cause you any health problems? Giovanni replies, the insertion of the implant in my skull took place in the instrument procedure by these greys in order to insert and build the same in different times. All the adoptees have one, but not many do not remember having it, nor do they have the type of analysis and therefore are not aware of the presence. The object can be inserted in some parts of the body, sometimes is placed in different points, such as the spinal cord, or although the hole is made behind the ear, but always to the point where it can connect it to the nerve endings in order to control remotely, and above all to be able to monitor us without necessarily having them withdrawn from home. As once activated, this device is connected to the computer or machinery that the Greys have on their bases and also aboard their flying saucers. They can know in real time the health conditions in which the subject finds themselves. This is regards to the level of serotonin, creatine, and carotene, but also in the hormonal processes such as the distance where they solicit their activation, and therefore know in time when the subject is ready to be subjugated to a collection of blood, eggs, and biological material mentioned above. Furthermore, as a human males, the process is carried out in order to take sperm quantities higher than normal production. This is under instrumental solicitation in order to be able to be selected the strongest and the most resilient spermatozoa to guarantee the excellent hybridization quality. As for the women, if one or more egg is mature, they can be inseminated with the alien stem cells, starting to gestation in the womb. This lasts about 21 to 23 days, where the hybrid fetus are then aspirated and transferred to the uterus artificial that, connected to a computerized machinery, consistently controls and monitors the fetus, feeding in gradually along the development path. I remember with great pain how the system was built in my head, a pain process consistently of the entry of thin instrument, a sort of fiber optic that wires that used today in telecommunication transmission, only a little more rigid. This is to give you the idea of the instrument that through the spinal canal, the nose, with very delicate practice, they reach the pituitary glands, building a small object in the different stages that will be incorporated into hundreds of nerve endings connecting to the whole body and brain. Surgically, it is not possible to remove. It is as it could cause paralysis, loss of vision, hearing, and other irreversible damages to the person who wears it. Unfortunately, this object absorbs a lot of the electromagnetic waves, cause me prolonged days of acute nosebleeds and headaches that can last for hours. The blog asked the 15th question: do you think there are alien bases on Earth and the hybridized living aliens living with us all? Giovanni replies, I think I have answered that question in one of my aboves. However, summing it up, I have been to several alien bases here on Earth. They have shown me that they have several both underground and undersea. The one closest to Italy is located under the island of Lampedusa. I have been there several times. Another is located in the subsoil that starts from Genoa and extends to Milan. But I have also been to a militarized base which is located in Area 51 in Nevada, and the other areas which is similar to Area 51 called S4. And in other bases in Dallas headquarters, I do not speak very willingly about these latter areas. And to tell you the truth, I have never understood why they brought me to these places. I cannot specifically in which one, but in one of these bases, I could count 13 UFOs built by terrestrials from the 40s to 70s. Then, by the will of these aliens who broke pacts with these governments, where they bought the great technology, but unfortunately, they soon realized man agreed to let these extraterrestrials come and go freely by giving them the chance to live under the bases in exchange for engineering, apply reverse engineering and drug development knowledges that could defeat many types of cancers and eradicate diseases such as Parkinson's and sterile dementias and Alzheimer's and other highly degenerative diseases. Soon these aliens realized that the human beings begin, and especially those who hold the power and control large pharmaceutical companies, as well as the factories that currently build the machineries for the radioactive treatments for many types of cancers, prefer not to reveal these pharmaceutical knowledge by applying the only to close circle of individuals in order not to harm large commercial giants that hides behind the construction and sales of these machineries that would otherwise preclude and the closure of industries and the job losses of thousands of doctors who work with these machineries to the detriment of many people forced to suffer in determinant of large healthcare costs, which in any case can lead to the death of the latter of whole series of agreements such as chain connection by many rigs built to the scales of aiming to make economic profits, not least the multitude of funeral agencies and all the expenses of these already marked for certain end. That is why some point of these alien refusal to continue to help the progress in science, but also in technology, luckily avoiding denoting these elements that are not founded on Earth nor on the Moon, but only in planet's origin to these aliens, materials that will give the possibility to use to build flying saucers similar to theirs with very probabilistic results. That man will use them in order to colonize the planets above or to exploit any type of resources recovering in these. For the reason these prototype crafts that I saw those based in America can only make up flights similar to those of normal planes. In fact, even today we travel space with atomic power rockets. In the past, man had tried several times to go to the moon, but very few real missions have been completed, also because the moon is inhabited by two alien civilizations that have understood man's interest to wanting to build a lunar base in order to exploit the resources offered. These aliens have by two alien civilizations that have understood man's interests in wanting to build a lunar base in order to exploit all the resources. These aliens have hunted the man who adopted the construction of orbiting space base. Many things are hidden from us, and also on Mars. There are currently underground bases inhabited by alien races who will soon be forced to leave the planet according to them, due to the strong solar radiation that swept and pulverizes all forms of life. They said that man's arrogance has no scruple or constraint, and will not prevent the will to set foot on the red planet, forgetting that he has already lived on Mars in the past, and that for the same reason he will be forced to leave. Since Mars cyclically gets very close to the Sun, and this involves the absorption, even in depth, of the radioactive solar winds that will generate strong eruptions and explosions, bringing the planets to extreme temperatures, which very cold nights up to 0 Fahrenheit, and day temperatures so high that it completely melts any type of metal or structure. This involves a land trip abate with adequate constructions for the time limit of staying no longer than 6 years for a civilization like the human one. Unfortunately, there will be no possibility of returning. Finally, they have made me visit the planets on which they came from, 4 to be exact, which are now extinct in the constellation of Aquila, Ultra 1, Ultra 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, that's Aquila, Altara 1, Altara 2, Altara 3, and 4. Then the interviewer asks 16th and 17th question: how many cases of alien encounters and abduction, quote-unquote, exists in the world? Have you ever researched such people in general comparison? How do the various testimonies resemble each other's? Have they resembled each other? 17. Have you ever interviewed several times by national and world radio TV conferences where you have attended with your testimony? Is it important for you, and what purpose does this make your story known? Giovanni replies, since I started talking about my stories and my experiences to people, many have started to talk about their experiences similar to mine at various conferences. Although I know that all over the world already before me, many others, people who are no longer alive, have been kidnapped, and still there are many men and women who are prominently kidnapped many times. The ship encounters, because they have been taken subjects. They can also take us all together. It has happened to me several times to be aboard the flying saucer and see other human beings in various races and different ages. Many people write to me and tell me some stories, Many people write to me and tell me of their stories, but not all of them as willing as I do, as I did show up in front of a crowd and make my experience public, and for that reason many do not want to get involved in this situation like the one that happened to me. Most of the people who live in experiences keep it to themselves and do not even tell it in their family, because they cover work or social position or certain type of front of many people who may not look favorably on lawyers and doctors and magistrates. A nurse or employee who tells what I have told by jeopardizing their careers, families certainly, or compromising friendships or social situations. When I decided to talk about my case to the TV, many people already knew about my experiences for some time, but I must say that it was not easy for me to bring my truth to the people on TV. They tell me that I have to talk about it, I have to make it known. How much more this reality, since it's not very distant time, they will be forced to manifest themselves. So more I can prepare people for this reality, the easier it will be to accept them when they can no longer hide. This is not just my task, but the task of all those who are like me, live the same experiences. Although I must say that there are unscrupulous people who are mythomaniacs, who only by learning of some knowledge from various adoptees have given themselves a little title of adoptees. They can be seen in all cities and all ufology conferences with such ease, recounting experiences they have never experienced. Many write books based on people's stories, storing untruthful thoughts into it, and this leads to most people to be able to be more skeptical. For those who really lived it, who do not have all this desire to tell others every day, because it is not all easy to bring back the memories that have made us suffer and that make us suffering. Put into these streets where these people ready to judge and offend points me again, I'm licking my wounds, although I think that at some point all the mask will fall off and the truth will come out. Longer asked the 18th question, in your opinion, from which element can the testimony of alien encounters be considered truthful? Giovanni replies, I had also answered this question through others, but I can still make a summary again. Sure, before me there have been many cases in the world of adoptees who are no longer alive on this topic. It wasn't much covered in Italy 40 years ago. In fact, adoption UFO knowledge is more limited to foreigners. Here we began to talk about UFO alien abductions in the 70s, but these, for various reasons, were not known as they spoke little of their strange experiences. The little culture and lacking of preparation on part of the ufologists in dealing with these topics certainly did not help those who had lived. My own experiences today, it is almost no longer possible to understand who is telling the truth. I have someone who says he's been kidnapped just because he's taken some notion here and there. I have read many books. Usually those who truly live these experiences do not really want to talk about themselves. On the contrary, however, there are many unscrupulous people who, despite not having any demonstration materials, having signs that can determine the veracity of what they say, these, however, have no qualms in going from city to city everywhere, and often because these are mythomaniacs, even the small percentage of people who really live these experiences is discredited, especially here in Italy, where we won't bother to study the individual cases in order to make the difference between the truth and the false. For this reason, when I decided to start bringing my knowledge and my truth about how I have lived, I was completely attacked and degenerated, insulted, and still today I find myself having to lick my wounds. And in any case, we always tend to believe lightly those who bring on stage a story of like experiences acceptable to the mass. Stories like mine are difficult to accept because they are full of strong and sometimes heavy content to be accepted as reality. Were it not thanks to the Japanese who I took the trouble to undergo all the necessary checks, both from the point of views of the analysts on the substance, leave me from these alien studies that you highlighted the presence of the implant in my skull, having undergone the lie detector test and through the hypnosis, but also the comparison with other adoptees gathering in the meeting in America, with people who came from all over the various continents, all with the same information, all with the same signals, both on physical and experimental level. However, the time has also come for the fall of man. However, the time has come for the fall of many masks of the people for years who have claimed to be kidnapped, but who then once recalled to undergo certain analysis and tests, as I did, they pull back. With this, I hope that my people began to have a different open mind, and that you finally began to deal with this topic with more intelligence and less lightness. We are on the threshold of 2020, and here in Italy, we still talking about ufologies still in the 40s and 60s, while in other foreign countries, they are at least 25 years ahead, and that you finally began to deal with this topic with more intelligence. Have you ever written a book about your history? And what are you doing in life currently? Giovanni replies, this story because I wanted to be an actress or have economic gains. I assure you that is not the case. You don't get rich. In fact, I've had to lose. It's a lot. I will pay attention to all those who recent years call me a liar of the mad or a beautiful deception actress. Giovanni says, I've been living with these experiences for 45 years. To lose all friends and relatives, to put face, to retire to total solitude. I don't think anyone should lead a life like that.